Going up the stairs, we see many Gothic-related pictures on the wall. Some of my favorites are of Gothic-inspired homes that we visited in the Hudson River Valley. Sunnyside, Washington Irving's home, was designed and built by him in 1835 and remodeled later in the Romantic style inspired by Gothic Revival, Dutch colonial, and Spanish monastic influences. Washington Irving was born in 1783 in New York City. He wrote many books. His two best known were The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, The Tale of the Headless Horseman, and Rip Van Winkle, the story of a man who woke up to a changed world after 20 years of sleep. An Alexander Jackson Davis-inspired schoolhouse that I photographed. And of course, my very favorite is the 1850s Knoll Brothers lithograph of the house, in its great Gothic frame that we talked about in part 1 of this documentary. These stair clips were popular in the Victorian and early 20th century, before carpet tack strips were available. They were decorative and helped secure the stair runner. Unlike carpet tack strips, they allowed easy removal or lifting for cleaning. Let's pause at the top of the stairs and look around. The chandeliers in this house are not original to the house. We installed kerosene chandeliers in the parlors, the front hall, and the top of the stairs. My wife converted them to electric. In the big cities that had gas lines to homes, a type of chandelier called a gasolier was used. Municipal gas was brought into the home under pressure and run to the hollow arms of the gasoliers and to the wicks of the chandelier. The Paugh house had these a later date than it had kerosene lighting, and the pipes to the front and back parlor gasoliers are still under the floorboards in the hall and the bedrooms. These kerosene chandeliers were state-of-the-art in the 1860s and probably replaced the oil lighting of the 1850s. The bowls that hold the kerosene are called font reservoirs, or simply fonts. The chandeliers are on springs and can be pulled down for filling the fonts or for positioning closer to the occupant's work or reading. The arrow in this photo is pointing at an area that appears to be purely decorative, but was actually created by plastering over the underside of the roof. This was necessitated because the house is 1.5 stories, not 2. The stair rail was almost certainly built by Charles Parrish, the builder of the house, as windows, stir rails, doors, and carriages were his specialties. Like most things in the house, it has a story. There's still nail holes on this railing from the 1930s, when one of the McFarland inheritors made the upstairs into a separate apartment. The area at the top of the stairs became a bathroom, and a wall was nailed onto the stair rail. The wall had a small door that, when opened, gave access to the windows and shutters. The plumbing is still in the walls. This room was there when the Vosses bought the house in 1940, and Jean Voss Alured described it to me. This is the nicest space we have to relax and read, with good light and privacy, and next to one of the bookcases in the house. Next to the stair railing is a Renaissance Revival chair. Much of the upstairs furniture is Renaissance Revival that was popular between 1860 and 1880. Our old friend George Hunzinger, whose work we saw in the parlors, was a leading maker of this style of furniture. The oak bookcase is early 20th century arts and crafts style, inspired by the work of Gustav Stickley. In 1849, my great-grandfather, Frederick W. Lucas, came from Plymouth, Massachusetts, around the Horn of Africa, to find gold in California. His passport, signed by President Buchanan, is framed and on the wall next to the bookcase. Here's Fred and Marianne Lucas's family, from top left, clockwise. Marianne Sylvester Lucas, my great-grandmother. Frederick W. Lucas, my great-grandfather, who was Santa Cruz treasurer. George Lucas, my grandfather. Superior Court Judge Harry Lucas, my great-uncle. And William and Harry Lucas. My great-grandfather wrote a book from his journal, never published, about his adventures in early 1850s California and what it was like to be a gold seeker at that time. Informative and entertaining. I digitized and illustrated it from his typewritten book and plan to publish it through Amazon after I finish this documentary. He most likely passed through Jackson, but before it was the county seat and several years before the house was built. Looking to the bathroom, originally a bedroom on the east side of the house. Victor the Vulture is just here for pest control. Above the table is images of the owners and their families, as described in parts 1 and 2 of this documentary. The design of this table, particularly the lyre-shaped support in the base, is characteristic of Empire Revival or Victorian-era furniture, inspired by earlier neoclassical and Greco-Roman motifs. The lyre-shaped pedestal and delicate carvings, notably the floral drawer pulls, are decorative and typical of parlor or hall furniture meant to impress guests. This kind of table was typically placed in formal parlors, entryways, or sitting rooms, often used to display family photos, small sculptures, or other decorative items. My guess is that this table is a reproduction. This 1804 copy of a medieval painting, I thought, added cachet to this Gothic house. This is a photo of the Sacramento Capitol building. It's obviously Victorian, but I'm not sure what the event was. I like to think it was when it was dedicated in 1869. We might be able to date it with the help of a carriage expert. The story of how the two newspapers were found in a time capsule from 1860, when construction began on the building, is told in part 1 of this documentary. I have 3 Victorian newspapers spanning the years from the surrender of General Robert E. Lee and the victory of General Grant that marked the end of the Civil War to the funeral procession of Abraham Lincoln. President Lincoln traveled to 13 cities, none in the South, over a period of 3 weeks. His coffin was lead-lined and closed when not being viewed, and a combination of multiple embalmings and ice were used to slow the deterioration of his body. These newspapers are printed on rag paper, commonly used for newspapers at that time. Rag paper was made from fibers from cotton seeds or discarded cloths that were broken down into pulp by soaking them in water. The pulp was then beaten and pressed to form sheets of paper. Rag paper, also known as cotton paper, was very durable and could last hundreds of years. After the 1860s, rag paper was mostly replaced by wood pulp paper, which we still use. This is the upper hall looking to the west. This oak Renaissance Revival Hall bench has a seat that lifts for storage. This Gothic window is called a triple lancet window. There are 3 of them on the second story. Each of the 2 windows that open are lancet windows, and when they're side by side, they form another lancet shape, thus becoming a triple lancet. Another type of triple lancet window is seen in medieval cathedrals, with 3 separate lancet windows side by side. If you've stuck with this documentary from the beginning, you have to be a real old house enthusiast and a lover of all things Victorian. There's still one more thing, or possibly 2, to cover before ending the tour. The bedrooms and the bathroom that was a bedroom originally, and the attics. So I'm starting on them now. When the house tour is complete, I'll be doing a video on the restoration process.